Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being right on time for this discussion. I can see people are streaming in steadily. It's going to be a very interesting conversation as we head towards Mother's Day. We'll be talking about motherhood and money, and we have a very exciting guest who's going to be sharing on her journey and some good nuggets on how we can make sure that we get our money right as well as we parent. So I'm just going to give a couple of seconds for a few more people to join the call and then we will get this started. In the meantime, please do share the link to this webinar with your friends, in your WhatsApp groups, in your family groups. A lot of people need to hear this conversation because I'm sure they'll leave knowing a thing or two about how to manage their money and how to parent. Remember, it's Mother's Day this coming Sunday, and we are celebrating moms as we speak on the topic of motherhood and money. So please share the link to this webinar with your friends, your family groups in WhatsApp, on Telegram, and all those social. And then we'll get this conversation started in the next 10 seconds or so. And also, if you already have come into this webinar having some questions around the issue of motherhood and money, please feel free to start going to the chat box and put your questions there, and we will share them with our wonderful speaker, and she will speak to them as we go. So it is 7:02 p.m. So I'd like us to officially get this conversation started as more and more people streaming. And by the way, it's not only a conversation for moms, it's also a conversation for guardians and dads because parenting is a village responsibility and everybody can pick a nugget or two from it. So good evening again and welcome to this edition of the Abujani Knowledge Series and Wisdom Series. And today we are celebrating moms and we are talking about motherhood and money. And I'm very excited about our guest speaker tonight. We have Nancy Matimu, who is the CEO of Serrari Group. Good evening, Nancy.
Good evening, Claire.
Good to have you on board. We're very excited about the conversation we have ahead, where we're just going to be celebrating moms and really speaking to that issue about motherhood and money, because we know that when motherhood comes, a lot of responsibilities come, and it's very important for us to be prudent with our money. So that is a conversation we're going to be having. And you will excuse me, my camera is acting up, so please excuse me. I may not be on video today, but we have Nancy on video there, and we're very excited about that. So, as we start this conversation on money, Nancy, I'd like you to just give us a brief overview of who you are. So, you are the CEO of Serrari Group, but other than that, when it comes to motherhood, give us a brief overview of what that journey has looked like, and then we will get into the conversation so that people can have some context of who you are as pertains to motherhood.
Thank you, Claire. So, yes, my name is Nancy Matimu. I am a mother of five children, aged between 39 and 22, and also a grandmother to two grandchildren, two wonderful daughters. And I started my motherhood journey several years back, straight out of college in the 90s. So some of you are possibly not born in the 90s. Um, and I met my husband, who then was my boyfriend. And very quickly, within 6 months, we were done for it and we were making babies.
Exciting, exciting. Wow. You know what? There's always this thing when people say that I have children, I even have grandchildren, and I say to them, you don't look like it. So sometimes I want to say that, and I'm not sure, are you going to take it as a compliment or not? But you don't look like you'll have a 39-year-old and you have grandchildren. But wow, amazing work there. And I want us to just delve into that. Five children, even one child, raising one child is not a joke. So tell us what that experience of motherhood has been, and especially when it comes to money. How has your perception of money changed over the years from when you had your firstborn, you're just new to this thing, and as you continue to add more children, how did your perception change over the years on how you look at motherhood and money?
Okay, so as I do that, I just want to make some disclosures. My children, out of the five, I actually adopted my sister's children long before I had my children. My firstborn sister had a fair amount of challenges in her motherhood journey and ended up having to take on her children just straight, possibly when I was still in campus, straight out of campus. And my husband, my boyfriend then had absolutely no issue. And he just embraced them as our children. So before we had our own two biological children, we had already three children. Actually, there were four, one passed on. So we have five today. So there are two things that have shaped my whole journey as far as motherhood and money is concerned. One is time. The second one is the children, obviously. So with time, you realize that you don't have all the time in this world to do anything that you want. So I have noticed that depending on the season of time I am in, my money priorities change significantly. And that started off when the season of motherhood came in. So I would buy the best dresses, the most expensive shoe, I would buy the most expensive bed for myself, the best cooker, everything I would find, I'd go for the very best. But when the children came in, I had to rethink what I do with my money. And the first thing was I noticed that I stopped even very quickly thinking about investments and started thinking about first providing the necessities my children need and creating a safety cushion. So just that whole idea of ensuring that we are safe, we have enough to carry us. And my husband, on the other hand, and I guess most men are very much like that, was like, he was only in his 20s, so whatever needed to be done that day could be done. The future was too far to think about. But here I had a child already and children. I had to think about what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen in a couple of months, how much money do I need, what schools do they need to go to. And that shaped my career choices. So all of a sudden, I started getting very serious about the jobs I wanted. And I mapped out and said, I need to make X amount of money. Only X organizations can pay me this kind of money. So it not only shaped how I think about money, but how I go about thinking how to make money, how to earn that money. So along the way, another big season was when my children grew up and they started getting into their 20s. And it occurred to me that I had been CEO for Multitudes at that point in time for a couple of years. And just before that, I was VP of MasterCard for Sub-Saharan Africa. And I was traveling a lot. And during those travels, I would really think I'd have, small little meetings with Nancy, and I'd panic about the fact that I cannot bequeath my children my VP job and my CEO job. And I started panicking about my children struggling, or even I struggling beyond employment. And that changed completely how I think about how I'm going to make money into the future. And that's what actually led to my entrepreneurship journey, where I wanted to get into a space where I had full control over how much money comes in and also the ability to be able to bequeath and create generational wealth, not just in terms of assets, but as a going concern. And, children, I don't think I would have made that decision if I didn't have children. I possibly would have carried on with my corporate career and been employed all my life.
Wow, wow, that's amazing. And what I'm hearing there is audacity because you're saying that, when you had children, you are thinking like, I'm going to be very careful about the kind of jobs I'm taking. I can't afford to joke because my children's lives are at stake. And I think it's important for us to understand your journey. For those who don't know you and who haven't followed you, we know that you are the CEO of Serrari Group. But before that, you've talked about MasterCard, you've talked about MultiChoice. Just give us a brief overview of what your trajectory looked like when you are in the corporate space before transitioning to entrepreneurship. And then I'll want us to talk about that entrepreneurship space because sometimes there's a fear with moms and parents because entrepreneurship is not a steady paycheck. You have a good corporate job and you're thinking, I want to take my kids to this school. Entrepreneurship, oh my goodness, if things don't go very well, it can be scary for some people depending on how your personality type is. So please just first take us through your journey in the corporate space and to entrepreneurship. Then we'll get into that thing of audacity.
Okay, so I started my career as a local area network engineer. Back in the days, a telephone connector, connecting lease lines and connecting dial-up lines. I was working for possibly one of the earliest ISPs in this country called Environmental Liaison Center International, ELCI. They were basically connecting NGOs and United Nations organizations, the UN Habitat, etc. And I was also a trainer, a computer trainer in 1993 at only 18 going to 19, so you can calculate my age. So I started working very early. And that basically shaped the future of what my career would then become. I ended up getting the tech world very early, worked for fairly small organizations because tech never existed in this country, literally. Computing never existed in this country, but for very few large organizations. And because of working for small startups, like the startup that I'm working for, um, sometimes, the run of those startups would be short-lived. And that's when I made the decision that, hey, I need to get into more mainstream organizations that are more stable, and because my children needed stability. And I started with taking on a job at Highway Africa, at a regional job at that point in time. Our Africa was a certain broadband communication company, and I was in the disciplinary relationship management team, in the commercial team. I practically set up the CRM, the customer relationship management function. I set up also the customer experience. I joined Matimu, who then became the chief of M-Pesa, to work in the marketing department and set up the marketing department and set up the strategic sales and distribution. We were in 3 countries, and before we knew it, we were in 32 African countries. And I was exposed to working with regulators. I then moved on to the telco world as we know it. I moved to Safaricom, and in Safaricom, I took on various roles. The most visible and notable roles is heading enterprise division, products and innovation. And soon after, I moved to Safaricom, the 180 billion portfolio at that point in time, running the consumer division products. And then I set up Safaricom Home. So we built Safaricom Home literally from zero, including finding offices, finding the team, putting together the team. I was the first employee of Safaricom Home. We wrote the strategy, we presented the board, and we executed and rolled out and said it would become the #1 in 3 years, which we actually, the company achieved soon after. And then I joined, I could see the future was going to be very fintech and money movement oriented. When you're an innovating product builder, you possibly have the advantage of seeing market research and insights about the direction the market is moving and how customer needs are changing. So I moved into the banking world as a chief digital officer, and I had only sat on that seat for only 8 months before I was possibly poached or headhunted by Mastercard. And then from Mastercard, I became the managing director of MultiChoice, a multinational that runs DSTV, GoTV, and then left to get into entrepreneurship. Set up Serrari Group. Serrari Group, we're in tech advisory. We do tech advisory and fintech advisory, specializing in commercial strategy, put together tech teams and the whole operating model, and also helping these organizations achieve 0 to 1 success. But then we also have our fintech platform, where we provide a decision intelligence platform for you to be able to compare products, investment products, and make the right investment decisions. Claire, what I'd like to mention is that that journey was not as easy as many people think. Along the way, I actually made the decision and realized that motherhood, my career, continuous development had to be run as 3 tracks, literally. There is no way I was going to say, I'm going to wait and become, take care of my children and still continue growing in my career because tech is very dynamic, extremely dynamic, and a lot of changes happen in the tech space. So I was forced to actually appreciate and adopt a mantra that I must see life as three tracks. I must go to school, work, and take care of my family at the same time. So I actually did my MBA when I was in the consumer division in the enterprise division in Safaricom and Airtel in between as the GM for Africa, non-voice revenue. And at the same time, my children were also going to school, so we would sit and do class at the same time. In the evenings at Transnight, and in the morning I'm in a boardroom. And yeah, so it wasn't easy. It wasn't really easy. And constantly just looking for opportunities and putting myself out there for me to be able to grow. I am married. I have a husband, as I keep mentioning, and he also has a fairly strong career in the global markets in treasury, in forex markets, in the bank. And both of us were very busy people. So one of the things that we also had to decide is where do you put your money with regards to the things that need to support us. So very early we had a driver, which was completely uncommon, a full-time driver to take our children to school and pick them at the time that we wanted instead of them being on buses. And that therefore meant if my hair cost XYZ money, I had to sacrifice my hair or other things, and it had to become not a priority, and this became a priority. So the priority investments and where we put our money also changed significantly. Yeah, so that's pretty much my background in terms of
Yeah.
who I am from a career perspective.
Wow, that's amazing. Prioritizing becomes non-negotiable. And I like the way you've put it in three tracks. There was the career, that continuous development through going to school, and then motherhood. And so you can't let any of these balls fall. And what a rich experience there. I think it was very important for people on this webinar to understand you're a pioneer and your whole journey to where you got to. And as you said, it's not easy. Sometimes it just looks all glossy and stuff, but it's not that easy. Now, before we go to how you make financial decisions. Let's speak a little bit about that entrepreneurship element because, as you said, you have these very nice jobs in corporate. I mean, someone is asking, why are you leaving some of these organizations to go into entrepreneurship? Of course, we know there's a lot of potential there, but sometimes it it doesn't happen overnight. And when you're thinking of raising children, you have these ideas of the schools you want them to go to, the kind of life that you'd like to live. What would you say to the people who are listening today on this webinar who are moms and who are thinking, you know what, I think I'd like to get into entrepreneurship, but then it's very scary because I'm in that space of building my family where I cannot afford to get shocks when it comes to my income. How do we go about it? Following what we know, we probably want to go into
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, but also wanting to be safe for our children.
Okay, so Claire, I think the first thing is that be really good at what you do. Be really good at what you do and give yourself fully at what you do and whatever assignment you're called to. Because my entrepreneurship journey started off as an accident. It actually started when I was 19, and I was asked by some people to help them find computers. And I bought a set of computers and delivered. Well, I wasn't too good. I was very naive, so the invoicing was not very well done. I was not paid on time. I ended up eating into the capital. My father gave me about 100,000. My parents gave me 100,000 shillings, banked straight into my Barclays account at that point in time to help me get this business off the track because they could see, tech and computing was the future. And soon, it was such a bad experience. I figured, oh, I need a steady job that gives me steady income because I need to pay rent and I need to buy food. And I'm the fourth born of 9 children. So middle child, zero priority. I come before two boys. There are only two boys in the family. So no attention whatsoever. So you things can slow down kind of attitude from the parenting terms of our parents. So um, what I can say is that entrepreneurship is something I practiced over a period of time. Because after that, then I went into consulting again by accident, because having been in tech and teaching, various people like Serrari Group, then became the SRC chair, how to use a computer. I taught, Evans Kidero how to use a computer. I taught Linus guitar, and these people eventually became notable people in the industry. And from that network, I would get requests to come and teach here, train here, and sort of we used to call them PJs, private jobs on the side. We call them hustles these days. So it's called
Yeah.
them PJs. So I was doing a couple of PJs, blowing computers, cleaning computers on the side, teaching part-time when I'm doing something else. So and then after that, I did a bit of selling of, so it's something that happened over a long time, a fairly long amount of time. But let me say this, that compared to making the decision to leave corporate and to do this full time, I was completely unprepared, and I can now share some lessons. So I had, as part of our personal strategy and family strategy, we write our family strategies together, right from how everybody will grow and how we shall grow as a family, the things we shall invest in, and the things we shall possibly decide we will do or not do. And we do that including our values. We do that as a family. We've done it for over 20 years now. So one of the things we clearly said is that we need to build a business post that will take care of us post, employment. And I'm the risk taker. You possibly can see that in the family. But my husband had to stay employed to give us some cushion. So if you have that opportunity to have a partner or a husband or somebody that gives you the opportunity for you to be able to experiment, I had that privilege, but it's not enough, because there's still Nancy, there's still the prestige of being a leader of a multinational, or working for the number one brands in this country and the continent. And I realized that for me to succeed, the number one thing is that I needed a new identity, because everybody would see me, they'd say, oh, Nancy of Safaricom, oh, Nancy of MasterCard, oh, Nancy of multi-choice or DSTV, they last called me. So I needed to be Nancy, and I also needed to lead with my company name or product names. And that in itself was not easy. I really struggled, even when I introduced myself to sell Adversity X. So what worked for me? One, the networks, because we actually, all our clients on advisory, there is none I knocked on the door of. They actually invited us. Even after today, even this afternoon, we've just gotten an invitation. So when you do stuff and do it really good, trust me, people see, do it extremely well. Sometimes people say you're overworking yourself, or you're being used for the organization you're working for, but you're actually building equity for yourself in the future. So my networks have actually come have been extremely useful during this season. The next thing is, don't be in debt. Do not be in debt. Don't be in debt. Your mortgage, everything as much as possible. You can't afford to stay awake and think about debt, because the worst thing, owing somebody. So I had an active mortgage, and it was keeping me awake because we're not generating enough money. And the first thing we had to do is to rationalize our portfolio and to clear my debt and free me up. The amount of exhilaration I actually got out of getting out, eliminating and exiting debt. And it's one of the things we actually teach about and share on our platform on debt exit strategies, was incredible, because it freed up my innovation and creativity mind. And then the last thing that I would say is that when you choose for a greater amount of success, as much as possible, identify capitalize so that you can preserve the money that you have for as long as you can. And then be very clear that you have enough runway to run you for at least, and this sounds chaotic, but you're going to leave your cozy, cushy job, corporate job. You need to have at least a runway of 3 years. literally, to pay the things that you need. Because if you don't, you'll find yourself going back to corporate. And I did. I left Safaricom, quit to go into entrepreneurship. In 4 months, it was clear to me I did not have enough runway. And fortunately, I was still getting headhunters calling me. So I went back into employment. When I left Multichoice, they still had people headhunting me, even as late as, almost every other month, I've got a headhunt email coming across. And, you need staying power for the business to work. You're the vision carrier. So if anything, your networks, being debt free, and then effective money management and capital management, ensuring that you've got good runway. Sometimes I tell my team we have enough time, even for the next 6 months, to experiment, to play around, even if we're not paid, because we've got that cover. So those are the things that have helped me. And preparing, of course, it's not something you just wake up this afternoon and say, I'm leaving corporate. No, it was part of our strategy. And we always planned 5 plus 5, 5 years. So I used to call it, like when I was during my last corporate years, I used to call them my apex years, when I'm reaching the apex, making CEO. And then the next 5 years were going to be our freedom years, to buy financial freedom and time freedom. And that's how then the big entrepreneurship vision came in. So it didn't start when I was in MultiChoice. It was a vision that started when I was in Safaricom so much years earlier. But you have to prepare yourself. Don't wake up and say, I'm upset with my boss, or this is not working and I'm quitting. Boy, you're going to fail and fall so hard. And I have sleepless nights, trust me, even today. It's not all glossy. Entrepreneurship is up and down, but I also have extremely joyful moments. And when you're working hard for entrepreneurship, you will work harder. So it is not true that you work less as an entrepreneur. I left my office this morning at 5 a.m., 5:50 a.m., and I was back to work by 1 p.m., and I will continue. So, and that's because the stage we are at demands my presence at that level. So spoken a bit much, but I like to really emphasize that, especially for women and women who are also just about in my age group. That's the guys between 40 to 55. Your body plays tricks on you. It tells you that you're tired and tells you that you're upset. And many women tend to make those exit decisions because, the mental state of your whole system is possibly not in the space where it should be. You really have to be careful and think through the decisions before you make any decision, because we sometimes don't think too straight because of the hormonal changes, and they are real. And it's important to have somebody you can bounce off and taking time before you execute a decision. Claire,
Wow,
back to
wow,
you.
wow, wow, that's amazing. This is a master class on life planning. I hope you guys are taking notes. And if you're enjoying the conversation, please go to the chat box and say so. And if you have any questions for Nancy, please put them there. But I like the way you're talking about don't make emotional decisions because you'll regret it. And it's not all glossy. There are times that you need to work and you'll work harder in entrepreneurship than when you have that nice, cushy corporate job. Now, there's something there that you've talked about family strategy. And in Abojani, this is like, I think this must be the second or third time this is coming up. I remember during a conversation that we had when we were talking about trusts, family trusts, and they were saying it's very important to have a family constitution. What does your family stand for? You can't just be living anyhow. So family strategy, guys, do you guys have a family strategy? And let's talk a little bit more about that, Nancy. As you said, your spouse plays a very big part in how you decide what moves you'll make, what moves you'll not make. So for all those ladies who are listening into this webinar, how important is it for you, whether it's your husband or your partner, to be on the same line when it comes to building your family finances and raising your children? Because sometimes, we hear it as jokes, but sometimes it's very true that everyone is living their own life. I have my own accounts, you have your own accounts, you have your own investments. Nobody knows what's going on. So two are better than one, yeah? So how do we consolidate that and really know that we are working and walking in the same direction for the best of our children?
Okay. Claire, I want to first say something around the makeup of households in this country. And thanks to my job when I was at Safaricom Home, setting up Safaricom Home, we discovered that 60% of households are actually run by women, single women, and no, sorry, are run by single parents. So it could be a single man or a single woman, and it could be either by choice or maybe not by choice, or even by circumstances of being widowed. So I'm very conscious of that, and I like to be conscious because even in my own family where I come from, 60% of my family is possibly in that either blended family or second marriages, or so you know I'm going to say this, and it might sound a bit controversial, but I think we succeed when we also see ourselves as I must do this. And if my husband was not able to support, what, can I still survive? And I think if Nancy was not able to support and she was, can we still survive? So it's important sometimes even to have that singular thinking to a great extent, because I think it has helped us a great deal. If my husband had a great job, bank job, if I looked up to him and assumed, oh, I'm good, whatever. So who knows? We could have we suffered a shock. Could we have taken the risk that we are taking? Could we possibly afford the lifestyle that we have? So working just as hard, like you talked about working hard, is very important. Now, let's come back to family strategy. So we started writing our strategies. I am possibly, people say that people describe me as very strategic and describe me, one of my strengths is strategic planning. But it's possibly something I have done. And I saw my mother writing on pieces of paper. My mother would write on pieces of paper and my father would write on pieces of paper. And then I would let them there, first and foremost, it's like they were practicing their, their signatures. And then I look at those pieces of papers, I see numbers, I see things. And, with time, I actually came to realize that budgeting and planning forward, dreaming happens on paper a great deal. So I started writing and doing the same in my own personal life. My husband, when he came in, he had never sat down to write proper budgets. He found me writing budgets, to the T, literally the smallest T. And we started now working on a collective budget and then working on collective plans. Then the children came. We would sit down. Now that they're grown up, it's a little bit different. But every Sunday when we had lunch and every evening when we prayed, we'd start with how was your day? What are you doing? What are you improving? What are you working on? So it might sound a bit intense and military, as one of my children once said, I need to move out of here. This is military and rule-based and too much strategy. But today, he's very grateful, and I'll tell you guys the reasons why. And so every end of the month was sort of like a stock take. Then we started this routine of writing at the end of the year, during New Year, would sit down and write a full family strategy, including our values and our wheel of life, and would assess each person's wheel of life and where you're struggling. And it would also say from each individual's perspective what you're good at, what you're not good at, and what you need to stop, what you need to start, what you need to improve. So, I say those things, strategy is so important and planning is so important. My children, like all our children, are gifted, but I think they excelled, especially in academics, because we made them understand you're in charge of your own strategy. Identify what you need to do and improve on, and let's work together. So we'd say, what's your goal today? What's your goal this term? Is to improve my math from B to A. What do you need to do? Write down. What are the areas you're struggling? Would write down. And then now we talk about what are your investment options? What school do you want to go? How do you intend to get there? And they would even write their own proposals and do presentations on how they want to be able to do it. So it sounds a little bit out of the ordinary, but I think it's been phenomenal and exceptional. And from a values perspective, my children would sometimes say, I want to go here. And I'd say, no, but it's not, does not fit within our values. And I think they understand. So they've also grown and said, Now I also have my own values, and they know the boundaries and why values are very important. So it's family strategies starts with, I think, one person, and most likely it's the mother, starts with the mother. And then if you're spending so much time, I took this course in Strathmore called PLD. It's a program in management development. I was the second cohort. That was very early in the 2000s. And that course, the first question that really challenged and provoked me was, we help you write strategies. Strathmore is a very family-oriented institution. Do you write your own personal strategy? You're busy writing a corporate strategy. Do you write your own strategy? Do you have your own family strategy? Do you get into the detail of how you're going to succeed the same way you get the detail of how you're going to succeed for this organization? And that changed my whole perspective completely, totally. We
Yeah.
talk about core values of organization that define the behaviors of organization and how that organization wants to be seen and the DNA of the organization. I need the same for Nancy, for my children, and for my family, and for my husband. So, yeah, excellence, focus, discipline, and we agreed and adopted those values as a family. Thank you.
Wow, yeah, I think that's very powerful. Yeah, I've had that as well before. People can be so dedicated to their corporate strategy, but you as a person, you Inc., what is your strategy? What is your family strategy? So we need to also think about those before we go hard on also the corporate strategies. And we'll talk a little bit more on that. But for those who are not very aware on the wheel of life, just tell us what areas that covers, the health, the what, so on and so forth. What are those core areas within the wheel of life that we should be looking at when we are evaluating our strategy? And I can see your comments coming in. Please keep them coming in. What you're getting, what is sticking with you a lot in this conversation, and any questions you have for Nancy, we'll sample those as we go along.
Okay, so what should constitute a strategy, especially a family strategy?
Yes, and what the elements of that wheel of life, the
Okay,
key areas
so
in your wheel of life.
okay, so let me say we try to simplify it because there are children involved here. It cannot be too technical. It needs to be very simple. So the first thing we start with is by realizing whatever we do, we will not be successful unless we have a set of values that set us up for success. It's almost like a culture. You're defining the culture for your family. So if anything, first decide what is going to make you very successful as far as values are concerned. Now, you then say, what do you want to achieve at a family level? What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? So I'll make it very simple. So for us, we said focus was very important. Don't do too many things. One, put our children in the best schools our money can buy. And that became strategic priority number one. Put our money in the best schools our children can buy. Number two, give them the best home experience that our money can buy. So having a fantastic home became a strategic priority. Number three, set them up for success and also grow. So personal development and continuous growth became our third priority. And then finally, we call it, this again, Kenya has an interesting way of translating and redefining the meaning of words, like a hustler and dynasty. Now, forget about what you hear in the political circles about hustler and dynasty. And we say we need to create so much wealth that can outlive us and our children build a dynasty. So once you have put all those things down, once you have identified what your strategic priorities are as a family, then what are the values that must support again? So you go back to your values and say, do these values really support what we want to be able to achieve? So for us, hard work, I keep talking about hard work, had to be central to what to the success because our goals were very lofty. Remember, best schools our money can buy, best home our money can buy, and then setting up a dynasty base for generational wealth. And that is very important because of the things that keep you going. And then once you've done that, and other people talk about this, but we sometimes underestimate the power of visualization. We actually print out and would maybe on our computers, because we do this on a presentation, we then put and say, this is our vision board. So architect, if a country home is part of our vision, as part of the things that we want to do in terms of the expansion of home experience, then we have the pictures of how that country home will look like. So when we start working on the architectural plan, sometimes it shocks us at how close it is to the photos that we had. So our vision board is very important, especially for children. They see, they get excited, they are so fascinated, and they can't stop reminding you that, Mommy, when are we going to buy this? When are we getting this? Mommy, when am I going to this? When am I going to go to this school? Mommy, can I go to this school? So, and of course, it's motivational on that, but on the day, when are we going to do this? So, as a bare minimum, the values, the strategic priorities, and then visualization because it's manifestation and it excites children. But you see, the children are expecting you to make it happen. So the financial plan to make that happen is critical. The financial plan to make that happen. So how are we going to fund X? And I'm going to tell you how we funded our home, which people find very fascinating. A lot of the times when they ask us, how did you build this home? How did you do it? Yeah. The next thing, now, once you have put together your financial plan, and actually part of the courses we have designed or programs we've designed at Serrari, and I'm not promoting, I'm just mentioning, is Money and Life platform, where you go to Serrari, you see Money and Life. And basically, when you get in, the things that I'm talking about are actually products we have built around proven experiences. So when you have your financial plan, it does not end there. Time, you have to be clear about time because your children will be chasing you. They are aware. Remember, the minute you open it up to them, now you're accountable. So to a great extent, we create an accountability framework amongst ourselves because the children are asking, and I'll ask my husband, he'll ask me, depending on what I'm responsible for, we'll ask each other. So that accountability framework sort of falls in place automatically. The final thing that we do is our circle of influence. Our circle of influence is very important to us. Why? Because as part of our growth, we want to be in circles that provide the environment where we can succeed and thrive, both as our children and myself. And we write it down. So one, for instance, Guka, dad and Shoshu and everybody. Number one, God. Number one, A, B, family. So, and those things are very clear that we are a Christian family, we are a Catholic family, and we have chosen to be a Catholic family because I was brought up Catholic and my husband, but the children have choices to discover what they want to be. So we are very, not very religious, but very big on nothing happens without God, really. And then the other influence is that our parents, we're here because of our parents. I'm here because of my father and my mother. Matimu is here because of his mother and his father. Some of the benefits we are enjoying today is generational wealth that has been passed on, that has allowed us to have our platform to succeed. That is important because then, so that also I must do the same for my children and their children, and they must do the same. And then our siblings, and why family is important. For us, family is very important. If I don't show my children that my family is important and Matimu's family is important, how can I expect them to think that my family is important and our family is important? And therefore, we spend a lot around family gatherings and bringing family together, and without even thinking about it, and it's possibly one of the most joyous things. And then our friends, who is a priority, and they know that, auntie so and so, who is actually not an auntie, just a friend, Auntie Jed, for instance, and she might be listening, Aunt Winnie, Auntie Beatrice, and Uncle, what they call Uncle Anthony, so and those are friends, but they know they're such a strong part. So because these people around you determine whether you're going to be successful or not, whether you're going to be derailed or not, whether you're going to celebrate or not, Auntie Patricia, etc. So
Wow,
that
wow. I
so
like
in summary, start with values, because values are the ones that will set you for success. You and your family and individual. Start with values. When everything is taken away, even when the world is taken away, you can always rise like a phoenix because of your values. And then be intentional, your strategic priorities. Then visualize it and claim it. I normally tell my husband, and he goes like, no, I don't even question it. Because I tell him the things that I say, we're gonna have this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna make this. He doesn't question it anymore, because before he'd go like, okay, all right, it's okay, dream on, and then ensure you have a financial plan. Don't just write things and assume they will happen. Financial plan, that's what makes you go for that promotion. That makes you go for that job. That makes you go for that extra product you want to sell. That makes you go for that extra client you want to sell to, or expand your business. And then your circle of influence. And of course, everything must be timed. And if for those of us that believe in a higher spiritual being and God, nothing happens without divine intervention and divine providence, at least in my life. And that's what we believe. So I told you, I'll tell you why it is important to work together, especially when you have now your goals joined together. If my husband had his own strategies and I have my own strategy, money put together and resources put together, I don't even know what happens, but it just compounds and possibilities just open. So how did we get our home? We actually built our home from scratch in Regis, from scratch, literally, ground up. We bought the property ourselves, cash money, looking for the cash to buy it. But what happened is that earlier on, and that's why I say there's good debt and there's bad debt. Very early, we were fortunate enough to have some good jobs. But one of the things that I believed in, my parents believed in, you need to live in your own home. And my mother believed in good debt. And therefore, mortgages for us actually worked. So we took a mortgage, or my husband took a mortgage of 5 million, 5.2 million. There's something about the two, 5.2 million. And we bought a house in Upper Hill. We were very young. We were possibly spending 50% of our earnings on that house. But guess what? We kept saying, but we are too young, we're gonna get a promotion. Things will get better. And they did. They did. They did. But your mortgage payment is exactly because it's fixed monthly. We actually paid it up within not paid up. Within 5 years, I think there was something like 3 million left out of the 5.2 million. So, but we've grown significantly. And now we were struggling to figure out how do we buy a new home. We need a really good home because now 5 children, 5 children in a 3-bedroom house, and the house girl is still living there. And sometimes we are got relatives, my siblings, my mom will come. This it's just too small. At one point, it may not be too small, but can be too small, especially if you come from a large family like mine of 9 siblings. So what we did was I went and said, we don't want to give up our family home that we started building. I mean, we've bought. We don't want to start destroying and disposing of assets. So your relationship manager, and depending on the bank that you bank with, matters a great deal. So I was banking with Standard Chartered and I spoke to my relationship manager. Now, I'm not promoting Standard Chartered, but they're very big on wealth management. And she spoke to me about something I'd only heard from friends in the US, equity release. She's like, you don't want to lose your home. Okay. So this is what you will do. Let me meet you with your husband and we talk about this. You can actually keep the home within the family. You buy it from your husband and you co-own it somehow. Okay, and what does that mean? Okay, so eligible for a 23 million mortgage. So I took a 23 million mortgage to basically buy a home. Our home that we bought for 5.2 million was valued at 28 million in 5 years. So the choices that you make of investment, make sure you're looking at products that are appreciating when you actually take debt. Because imagine a property bought for 5.2 million was now all of a sudden in Upper Hill going for 28, valued at 28 million. And that's why I got a 23 million. So I bought it from my husband at 23 million. And we paid off his entire debt. He became debt free. So by becoming debt free, he also had an opportunity to take another mortgage. So he took a construction loan. So we bought the extra money that was left, trading within the family. We traded within the family. The money that was left, we bought the property in Ridges, 15.2 million cash. And then he took a mortgage loan and we were able to move into the home within 15 months. And that's what's important to plan. How are you going to fund and talk to people? There's so much opportunity outside here when you talk to the right people. So I want to stop there. Thank you, Claire.
Wow, well, that is amazing, guys. Did you hear that? If you talk to the right people, you'll get to understand so many opportunities that happen. And you talked about StanChart. We just had an X space last week with them and talking really about wealth management. So that's amazing, guys. Just share what you're getting from this conversation. What is really sticking with you? I think it's very important, as you said, you need to really be smart about how you go about your finances. And guys, do you have a do you have a vision board? Are you visualizing? Do you guys have vision boards? Share. If you do have vision boards, are you also putting the financial plan that is needed to go with it? Because as they say, the dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately. So you can dream, but then you have to get to work to make these things happen. Now, I'd like us, and I like the way at the beginning of this you said that the dynamics of families are very different. As you said, when you're in Safaricom, you realized about 60% of people are in single parent homes. So we don't want to neglect those. So probably before we go into some practical steps and money habits for different people in different income levels, maybe you can speak to that mom who is here, who may be a single mom. What are some practical steps that she can use to make sure that she is financially stable?
Okay, all right. So I think this applies to, the reality is it's not like the days of our parents. So, and that's why I started by saying that we need to see ourselves in singular states because my husband's job is not guaranteed. My job is not guaranteed. Our fortunes of entrepreneurship are not guaranteed. So whatever I'm going to say may apply to a single person more, but it will, and remember, I've not been single in my life, but I've got single siblings and are widowed. My last one sister is widowed. And the one thing I can tell you is that really plan your financial life, and from a risk perspective, possibly consider moderate risk. So there are different risk profiles, and when you go into money and life on Serrari, you can actually be able to determine your risk profile and risk appetite and be very honest with yourself because the responsibility is so big. And some people also feel like that because I feel like at one point, like my whole family and my extended family was sitting on my shoulders. And I almost felt like I was running this race alone for at one point. And the grandiosity of my dreams made on me almost feel like I'm almost run. And I'm not trying to say in any way that I know what it means to be a single parent, but I do have my best friend, Jed, is actually a single parent. One of the things that I've found that works is financial planning, not short term. So the one advice I give to my single friends and even to this Nancy herself was I was CEO of a multinational. There's a lot of money that moves inside and out of the country. And therefore, treasury management is such an integral and important part of what multinationals do, cash management. So I discovered very quickly that to avoid forex losses, there was always such prudent, almost every other day, every other week, money being moved to I'd say capital preservation instruments and also high yield instruments. And I wasn't doing it for myself. So one of the things when we talk, some of my friends would tell me, my single friend, I am paying my son's school fees in Turi or whatever. I am paying it several. I've already paid for next year. I asked her, why would you do that? Why on earth would you do that? You need to put that money in a high yield interest account. It's a lot of money, even if it's 100,000 and you're getting 10,000 shillings out of a 10% interest. And you don't pay next year. That 10% you're getting to be 10 shillings could be that 1,000 bob that buys you airtime. So we need to be more clever about how we manage it. So I know there's the temptation to want to cover the risk ahead, but no, you are funding somebody else, but they're going to put it into an interest earning account and they will earn the interest that you will not earn. That's one, a behavior that I noticed. The other one I would advise is when you look at, when you think about money, think about multiple streams. Think about multiple streams because unlike somebody who can say, I can quit my job because my husband still has a great job. You may not have that opportunity. And it's a reality that we can't run away from. So therefore, this country is the biggest proponent of the hustle. And the hustle can be as simple as even buying grains and setting up a shop in Nyamakema. One of my neighbors, one of the richest and cash rich people in my neighborhood, she does grains. It is not complex, but do something extra. It could be also maybe teaching on the side. Set yourself up for multiple revenue streams. I don't remember when I relied on a single revenue stream. Last time I relied, even today. So it's important to actually diversify your income so that should any shock happen, then you're in a position to be able to deal with it. Then the last thing on singlehood is, and I keep saying that sometimes I also run these races and I assume like, what if Matimu is not making that money? What if my sisters are not making that money and dad needs to be supported? That has really helped me go after opportunities that you never even think you would be able to go for. Being brave enough, just be brave to think sometimes as an individual. And because we are already that individual. And go for it. Go for it. You'll be amazed at what comes out of it. Go for it. The things that I'm doing today, I never dreamt I would do them. I was afraid of doing them, but I'm doing them because of that fear of losing household income completely. Some of them are extremely audacious. Go for them. If X person has succeeded, you can succeed too. And there's so many examples of so many successful people who are running single. The CEO of Mara Realty, who is my little cousin Jane, she set up this company 5 years ago and she's already doing almost $1 billion turnover. So, but determination, just be determined and keep going. And then make friends and be around people who know where things are happening. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Go for it. If person X can do it, so can you. You need to go for it. And that thing of diversification, do not be relying only on one source of income. The Bible even says it. Have 7 or 8 because you don't know when disaster will come on the land. So you need to be diversified. I can see the comments are coming in. Thanks for those. Continue to bring in those comments and questions. Nancy will answer them as we go ahead towards the end of this conversation. But I'd like us to speak, Nancy, to some lady who is in this webinar and she's thinking, oh my goodness, this sounds like a lot. I'd like to start my journey, but I don't feel like I'm there yet. This person who does not have a nice corporate job, who is not earning so much money, but also wants to start building wealth for herself and for her children. What are some tips you can give for people who are just starting off and may not have access to all this cash, but they also still want to build that wealth, that so-called dynasty, at one point in their lives?
Okay, so let me first clarify that I didn't wait to get to where I am to start investing. Okay. And nobody stopped me from being audacious and dreaming that I can set up a base for a dynasty. And nothing was going to stop me, and nothing is going to stop me either. And then mindset is very important. I used to say I am going to make a six-figure salary. These days, six-figure salary sounds like the norm, like 100,000 should be something like the norm. Back in the day, people are largely paid, 8,000, 10,000, 20,000 bob, 30,000 bob. 100,000 shillings were a lot of money. And I said, and I declared it with that six-figure job. And then I'm going to make that seven-figure job and I'll become a millionaire. And I'll become a multimillionaire. And I'll become a billionaire. So it's not about where you are today. Let me tell you a little secret. When we moved to Kiamburu, we were living in Upper Hill. Upper Hill is likely very high corporate concentration. A lot of corporate people, working there, living there. And therefore, I had very little interaction with people who actually run businesses and what is called small businesses. So when we moved into Kiamburu, we go to this church here called Our Lady of Rosary in Regis. And one of people, that girl who works for Serrari Group, that girl who became CEO, she's always in the newspapers, my friend. When we come out, the person who is telling me that and saying that she's driving a Range Rover, another one is driving whatever. Do you know, I quickly discovered that even in my prayer group, myself and a PS and my husband were possibly, and one other person who works for Safaricom and maybe Kellen Karike at that point in time at Citibank, were the only employed people. Everybody else was self-employed. Where did their journey start? Selling small little things. Even I sold a shoe. I sold shoes. Those of you that know my story. I sold shoes. Now, I went to Dubai when people started going to Dubai back in the day. I took a flight to go to Dubai and went to Deira. Deira, huko nyuma is like River Road or whatever, to buy things in wholesale. You know what I bought? I was buying what I think I buy best at that point in time. I bought panties and bras and lingerie and put them in my boot. And that boot was one car we shared with my husband. He would go to NIC, open the boot, and all the girls and his friends would come to buy panties and bras from our car. So, first, how to make money does not start with making a lot of money. I like to say big start small. Very, very, very small. And my first salary was less than 5,000 shillings. But I started investing. How children change yours. The first thing I did was to first make a big mistake of thinking that insurance is investment. It's not. So I'm like, children will go to the best school. So I need an education policy. I'll be paying 2,000 shillings a month. Okay, I quickly discovered that as inflation grows, the 2,000 I am putting in school fees also inflating over time. So that was not going to work. So what I did, and this is true story, those of you that know me and would like me to take you to some of the areas I'm going to talk about. My first investment was a Chama investment. Chama. I wasn't even making that much money. My mother forced me to join her Chama of retirees. I was possibly the youngest retirees. They'd put money together and buy property in Muranga town. They'd buy plots, acres, and then subdivide into plots. My first investment was 40,000 shillings, which I paid in several installments to buy a 1/8 piece of land, which today is valued at 4.5 million shillings. Today. Now, what happened is, as my salary started improving a little bit, my mother would come and tell me, the women have seen the land has doubled, it's 100,000 shillings. Nancy, buy. So I started buying from the women because they wanted cash and they were returned. So I would buy. So, and my father would say, those pieces of land are so ugly. They're terrible. Don't buy them. Now, it's one of the areas that is the people are building towards as you go to Sagana, between Morangatam and Sagana. That whole area on your right-hand side, where there's a lot of development happening, those little pieces of ugly land that was nobody possibly would have wanted to buy are the ones that are actually one of the good destinations there. Now, if you go to our website, Serrari, you will see that to invest in a money market fund, you don't need $1 million shillings, you don't need 100,000 shillings. There are funds that allow you to invest as low as 1,000 shillings only. Now, Kenyans, we have been told that investment equals land, investment equals a house, investment equals. So, again, I remember my mother, I used to think she was a very important person because she would receive all these annual reports of publicly traded companies. And then I discovered later on she was a shareholder. And she introduced me to shares, including that group. She introduced us to shares, and we would contribute like 5,000 bob per person, which was over time, and then we would buy shares. The good thing about shares is that you can buy so little, which put in as much as the money that you've got. So you have got investments that allow you to put in so little, and over time they become so much because if you continue doing them. Another good example is when you think about putting money for investment, it doesn't have to be, I must wait until I have 100,000 shillings or earning 100,000 shillings to buy that piece of land. So even today, one of the things that we do at Serrari for even my business is we diversify where our assets are sitting, cash assets and non-cash assets, revenue generating assets and capital preservation assets. So now, maybe bigger companies would invest in a huge treasury bonds amounts. We don't have that kind of money. We start where we can afford. They're possibly going to buy the most expensive property. We can't. But the good thing about property, let you in a little secret. When you're buying property, nobody expects that you will give that money 100% there and then. Because there's a whole process of transfer. So that also allows you to work with small installments here and there. And there is land even in Mandera and other places that is going for 100,000 shillings. You might look down upon it today, but my people, that little ugly piece of land that my father called ugly, which he now takes me to today and keeps telling me, Nancy, your properties are doing so well. 10 years later, will become one of your best portfolio assets. Then think long term. When you're doing investment, don't think short term. You say 1,000 bob, what will it give me? 1,000 bob compounded. You can go to a platform and use the investment calculators and use the compound interest, or even see how much money you make with your treasury bond as income, or how much you're getting from your MMF. 1,000 shillings today. If you look at it 20 years from now, will be significantly so much more. So learn how to do micro, frequent investments and regular investments, as opposed to waiting for this waterfall moment where you have got a big break and I can put money aside. No, work with what you've got. Let's work with what we've got. That's what our mothers did. That's what I learned from my mother. And that's what I teach my children. And I tell them, I don't even work with the 50-30-20 rule. You've heard about the 50-30-20 rule, budgeting rule. It emphasizes savings. We at Serrari, we talk about 50, 15, 15, 15, 5. The last 5 is giving because we give a lot of mass budget for that. And that the reality is that we are always giving as African mothers, always giving 5%, and as African households. The next 15% as a bare minimum, every single month, or for those of us who are in business, whenever you earn, you put aside 15%. 15% for investment, not savings, not emergency. And then the other 15% is now for savings. That separation of savings from investments will set you on a trajectory of success even when you have small, little amount of money that you are investing over time. And then, of course, the 15% you plan for that, maybe nice wig that you want to have. And I think the best inventor of anything was the inventor of the wig, because I don't worry about what is sitting under. What is looking up here is what works better and show up. And they say, therefore, save time. So yeah, start small and always do it. Yeah. Continue for a lifetime.
I like that. Start small and continually do it for a lifetime. And I'm going to start going to the comments. But before that, you had spoken about, how you had started with the education policy and mistaking insurance with investment, because I saw there was a question around that. So maybe you can tackle that. How do you balance between like daily expenses and long-term investments? And how do we differentiate between the two? What's an
Okay.
investment? What is protection for our children?
Okay, so I'll speak on this about this from two perspectives. I'm aware there are people who could be listening who are business people like me, and there are people. They are now where I'm coming from, which is employed. The majority of us tend to be employed, especially those of us that choose to go into these forums. Now, you must from the very beginning, when you write your budget, and we have a budgeting tool and spend planner too, in the Money and Life series online. When you write your budget and you prepare your budget, no more than 50%, and you can do it, no more than 50%, even for a business. So paying rent, paying salaries, of all the money that comes in when your income comes in, 50%, no more than 50% should go into your consumption, eating, whether it is food, drinking, and paying for rent. Especially eating. I used to tell my children, I can tell you this. They would be in a supermarket, they go like, mommy, I want this, very expensive Pringles. I'm like, I'll buy it for you, but not today. No. You go for the cheapest. And my children will be running in the supermarket. In Nakumat Mega and Nakumat Regions, I remember, especially when we were living in Nakumat Mega, would be going around and they're running down the aisles. Mama, this is the cheapest. Mama, this is the... And the reason why we did that was to live within that 50%. But guess what also? Because toilet paper, cooking oil, soaps, you spend 20,000 shillings, it's literally gone into your septic tank. Literally. All of it. All of it. So I tell my children, you're going to flush it, you're going to eat it, you're going to flush it. It's money you're putting in the toilet, in the septic tank. You shower with the most expensive shampoo. It is good to the toilet. It is. So first, you can live within your means. I guarantee you. As a company also, my people sometimes will tell, we have a purpose-built office. It's somebody's asking me to repeat, it's 50% for what you consume, including rent. 50%. The next 15% are things like, if you're a company, getaways. So we were in Abadea's country club for team building for our team. That is the 15%. Yeah. But even then, actually sits within this. Because those are things you can do without. For your children, I can do without ice cream. Ice cream is really not food per se. If they will not die because they did not eat ice cream, or they did not have Lucozade, or they didn't have, I'm also sure what we buy for children, but we used to buy those, flavored milk, things back in the day. So those still fall under ones, including that travel to Mombasa that you plan for every time there's a holiday, or to Naivasha. That's 15%. The next 15% is now savings for your emergency funds. It is, savings, or when you try to put together a little bit of money to put it in there. Savings. The savings is exactly that. I'm saving for a rainy day. In fact, we say for a rainy day. But investments are not for a rainy day. That's why we have the 15% for wealth. If you want to build wealth, you must be very focused on both for your company and for your home. You have to be focused on that 15% for wealth. So, coming back to how you control that, it's by simple habits. Even when we were creating the asset base for this family, which includes now maybe the homes, the farms, the land, and the cash, we're creating that asset base because we forced ourselves and our children to know we'd travel, we'd go to South Africa with the children. Back in the day when they were little, go so that they can see the Big Ben that they see in cartoons and they read, go to London, the London Bridge. We did that. But then we realized very quickly those things were expensive. There's no trip back in the day that cost us less than $500,000. $500,000. It's a lot of money. So we'd tell them, do you want the house or do you want to go to London? Do you want to inherit a piece of land or do you want to go to South Africa or to Dubai? So we trade off. Do you want the house or do you want us to eat pizza today? Do you want us to, my husband will tell me also, Nancy, let me take you out. I'm like, oh, fantastic. I know we're going to spend like 10,000 shillings. Please give it to me. I go and buy plants on Kiambu Road. I come and plant them here. So that delayed gratification helps you plan and live within what you want for a greater lifestyle in the future. So you
Yeah.
can, for our business from day number one, part of the guides we have online for Serrari for your business is expense ratio. It's a very important ratio. From the day number one, we made our money a Serrari. 50% we put aside. In fact, we sweep it. As soon as we are paid, we sweep it immediately to a holding money market fund account automatically. And then the other 50% runs the expenses. If the expenses of the company are not being paid this week or today, all that money goes to the MMF. So we hold very little money, extremely little, sitting in a current account. Because if someone ever told you, if your money is sitting in an instrument that is less or anything less than that, giving less than 4%, or the inflation rate. In this country, the inflation rate has been sitting about 5%, was sitting as high as 7+% earlier. Your money is losing value. So that money that you're saying I have in the bank, in your current account of 10,000 bob, it is not 10,000 bob. Because what 10,000 bob can buy you today, by the end of the year, it cannot buy you because inflation, cost of goods rises systematically, and it is a guarantee world over. So I've spoken so much, but there's nothing as important as expense ratio management. That especially for even for businesses. When you put aside that 50%, it's what has enabled us this year at the beginning of the year. We suffered a major shock. We lost a significant advisory client and we stopped servicing other clients to focus on this client. When we lost that client, our inflows were affected because our smaller clients were not giving us possibly as much as they were giving us. But because of that discipline of expense ratio and using these ratios to manage our money, we had a runway for over several months to even allow us to reorganize ourselves and get into the market, build fantastic products without rushing, without panicking, without anxiety.
Wow, oh, thanks. Expense ratio, very important tidbits there. Now, I'd like us to go to the comments section. Quite a number of comments coming in. I'll start from here. Vivian Auma says, taking notes. Sylvia says, have a 3-year cushion before exiting your employment. That's what you're talking about. Yvonne says, wow. Kate says, amazing. I should meet that relationship manager. That's when you're talking about Stan chart and that advice they gave you on the mortgage. Engineer Wagai says, what's the place of retirement planning in a family and where does financial freedom come in? Let me take 3 of them, then you can take them at once. So retirement planning, you've spoken to that, but you can speak a little bit more. Jean here says, good evening. The webinar is insightful. Thank you so much. Behind every successful mother was or is a supportive boyfriend or partner or husband. Motherhood is a journey and I love this. Happy Mother's Day in advance, Nancy, Matimu, Claire Munde, and all the mothers. Thanks for that. I don't know if this is the Jean from X. If it's you, hi. Let me take another one. Zaritu says, such an awesome webinar, Nancy. I take every experience you shared with gratitude. I've taken lots and lots of notes. Be blessed. Thank you, Abujani, for facilitating. Claire, always an excellent. Thank you, moderator. Thank you so much. Grace Joy, the question was asked. And then Lynn says, did you have to get married to allow yourself to make decisions with your husband, or did you make a choice before marriage, or how did you build trust? Yes, so take those two, retirement planning, and then this idea of marriage and partnership. How do you build trust? And do you have yourself figured out before getting married, or how does that work?
So let me start with the last one, trust. And before that, let me say that you cannot be too prepared for life. Even with all these plans, sometimes curveballs come your way. But the good thing about plans is that when the curveball comes away, your plan B is already ready to be set in motion. I thought I should just mention that. My living multi-choice, I had a plan to be there for 5 years, but I ended up being there for only 3 years, 6 months. So during the period, I wanted to push streaming, and there might be some multi-choice people listening. I was so pro the future, but the business also was very focused on traditional business, which is the biggest revenue, and protecting that. And also, I think generally, so we say at CEO level, some of the exits have nothing to do with your competency. It has everything to do with how you see the future and how everybody else is seeing the future. So it was almost untimely, but I had a plan, and I'll start with trust, how we handle it. So I dated a couple of people, but I don't belong to the same club as Carmen and Goro, but I had dated a couple of people in the sense that if it didn't work me, I'd just move on. I'm just like, hey, this is not working. Me, I'm not gonna get a heartbreak. Nah, 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 nah. And of course, I got heartbroken so badly at one point. And during that period, and I was only, I think, 22 or something. During that period, I made a decision. Whoever I am going to settle down with, one will not be 3 years older than me, because I want us to be able to have a conversation and to openly so and to have fun, play together, but also listen to each other. So number two, I also, out of those many experiences, I also saw a pattern of people I was not compatible with, and a pattern of people I could be just about compatible with. And it's funny because for me, an intellectually stimulating person, and I'm not talking about academically astute, the best student or the best performer. I'm just talking about intellectual stimulating. We can have intellectual conversations and we can see each other and meet. So that was important. And therefore, when my husband never found me, I found him. I was hanging out by myself, and please, 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 please. I share some of these stories. Please don't take them out of context because I share them in various forums.
Yeah.
I was seated at Cactus. I used to love going to Cactus. Cactus was a bar in the middle of town. And it was a bar that people used to say it was a nice little hangout joint. Like we didn't have lounges, it was just maybe the while people could afford. Nice little bar with lovely music. I love listening to music. So I'll be there most of the evenings. And by the way, that doesn't mean therefore that when you're too serious, you don't have fun. So you still have fun. When you go to church, it doesn't mean that you don't have fun. You still have fun. So I was sitting there, and my friends from campus who were 2 years ahead of me, who had cleared ahead of me, came and they walked in. And they all wanted to talk to me. Those boys wanted to talk to me. I was like, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to that guy, that one there. That one, please ask him to come and sit. You guys move. Let him come and sit here. They all started asking, he came and sat there. And that's how we basically we started chatting and talking. That's how I basically spotted my husband. And I found myself a husband who's been here up to date. We laughed a lot and we laughed a lot. We went back, walked from one part to the other. I'm not saying it's a good thing, so please don't go and tell your children to do that. I don't try to do that. So there are those things that you do in life that may not be necessarily too good, but unfortunately you have gone through them. So my husband and I have been best of friends because we met as playmates, so to say, playmates, just college buddies, you know. I actually thought he went to KU because the batch of those guys were all of them from KU, but he didn't. So I'm saying that because trust does not come out of, you have to be such good friends to trust each other. I trust him with my life 100%. And I know he does trust me with his life 100%. And we saw each other every day. Thereafter, were never quite apart, unless I've traveled or something. So we are those of you that know my life, my husband and I were very close. So trust is earned. You have to do the right things also for them to trust you. For us, we get a promotion. Here is the letter. I got a promotion. I got a pay raise. Here is the pay slip. Everybody knows this is a bank account. This is what inside in the bank account. There is nothing hidden. Okay, sometimes he will have extra money. He will not tell me. Maybe, I don't know, he sold something or they went into or whatever. But that's okay. That's fine. But the majority, I can say 99.9% of possibly have visibility, and 99.9% possibly has visibility. Our trust levels are extremely high. So for and that doesn't mean that sometimes you don't do chaotic things. Sometimes I dream, like I've been having a dream with this girl that I think he's seen. I'm having a dream and then I'm having nightmares. I will go to the family room, I am sweating, I'm breaking into a cold sweat. And he has me, please sit Nancy. Oh God, I dreamt that girl again. And please, whoever is a prayer warrior, please cancel that whole situation because it kind of kills me sometimes. So, so we are that close, as a matter of fact. We have those conversations at that level. Now, let's talk about retirement and financial freedom. One of the big reasons, first, can I tell you what? If you're not investing, forget about being wealthy. Being rich is not wealth. Having a lot of money is not wealth. Having a lot of cash is not wealth. Flashing around cash is not wealth, especially if behind what people are not seeing is massive debt. What is your net worth? If you do not have a good positive net worth, you can't be ready for retirement. It doesn't matter whether you are 60 years old or 70 years old. And you could be ready for retirement as early as your 20s because your net worth is so good. But also, it's not enough to have a strong net worth because you could have, let's say, a piece of land that is valued at, let's say, 1,000,000 shillings, and your debt is only, let's say, 100,000. So your net worth in total could be about 900K. But that you can't eat land. You need cash flow. So when you're preparing for retirement, it's not enough to have a good net worth position. You've seen many people who are unable to pay for their medical. Some are even sometimes unable to even feed themselves when they retire or lose their jobs. And that's because we're busy accumulating fixed assets that cannot be easily converted into money. And when you start eating your assets, you're eroding your wealth position. So you want your wealth momentum to continue even when you've retired. And that therefore means you need to have cash flow generating activities that give you cash over and above the hard assets. When I was in my financial accounting class with McPhee, the famous Jim McPhee, he said businesses and life is about cash flow, cash. Cash is so important in retirement, my people. Cash, so important. Even for me, sometimes I panic. I'm like, do we have enough cash? You know? And therefore, building free cash flows and the cash buffer is very, very important. Still under retirement, you can have cash and you can have assets, but you cannot achieve financial freedom because there could be people depending on you and the assets and the cash. Many of them are asking for it today. Something could happen and they need it. You know, we must always remember that chances are your child will need you, or your father will need you, or you will need. The reason I'm saying that is Some of us could be very comfortable, but a single incident of a child of yourself or your spouse or family can set us back so many years. So there's a rule I use, which I think I read somewhere, and I have started to apply it, and I've had it in many trust and private investment companies and capital meetings that I have been privileged to go to, is that when you're deciding, number one, your true freedom, it's not just about what you're going to live on, is look at the bigger circle and the chance of dependency and the possibility of dependency. And therefore, your wealth should be at least 5 times that. At least 5 times that. It's lofty, but when you start working towards it, it starts to make a lot of sense. So, because then you can achieve freedom in the actual sense of the word. And when I talk about cash generating, I'm not talking about self-employment. There's a difference between self-employment and there is a difference in entrepreneurship. Self-employment does not give you time freedom. Talk about freedom, yes, we're talking about financial freedom and time freedom. We want financial freedom so that we can buy time and have more time to ourselves and enjoy in latter years. Self-employment, for as long as I'm working, if consultancy depends on Nancy to make money for the company, then when Nancy is not there, money is not there, you're not free. And you cannot therefore achieve even time freedom. If you invest in a flat that is giving you rent and lots of rent, you can preserve capital in the asset and generate cash flow, then you can disappear for a year and not worry. If you put money in treasury bonds that pay you coupon income every month, and they have better returns, by the way, so you need to have a mixed portfolio than some land and property investments. And I can give you a small example. Our house in Upper Hill, which was later on almost valued at about 30 million, that house could only fetch us a maximum of 150,000 shillings a month. Selling that property for, let's say, assuming 30 million is selling, put it into treasury bonds that have a blended value of about between 14 and 17%, and taking infrastructure bonds or tax-free bonds for that matter, you will get a cool 200 plus, and your money is still protected and preserved. You can't just draw it out just like that. So again, read widely. It's not just rent that can get you, and also connect with people. It's not only rent that can set you on a trajectory of freedom. You can use other instruments to be able to do that. So time freedom, fully, quite frankly, you need to have real passive income. Robert Kiyosaki used to talk a lot about that. And we all know that, but how to get there? We are saying you don't have to have a flat. You can start with a treasury bond here and there. If you go to the Serrari platform, you can see monthly income from bonds calculator. It tells you if I want 150, if you put I want 150,000, it shows you how much you need to invest in bonds and which bonds you should invest in and how to buy which bonds. So yeah, so there's a lot of information. One of the reasons why I started where we built Serrari platform is because of the struggle that I had in exactly the questions you're asking. Where do I start? Where do I start? Who can I trust? Is it just the advertised information? Is it just my relative that I don't know whether they are friends with, the product owners? Yeah. So I hope I've tried to help. By the way, I am preparing for, I don't intend to retire. I'm preparing for growth and not retirement. I no longer belong to the category of people who want to retire. For me, all I want is time freedom. But I want to grow. I want to be very useful in life, intellectually stimulated, still applying my skills and dispensing whatever, responsibilities that the world throws at me, but within my own terms. And that truly is what freedom is all about. I also strongly believe that you cannot create real wealth unless you invest and compound it and be safe enough to be strong enough to think in long-term views of 5 years, 10 years. My father at 81 is still very active, extremely active. He's always trying to do something, and he's also quite encouraging. So teach those things to your children. I think when you say that you're retired, we possibly don't know the meaning of the word retirement, because I think sometimes the word retirement means that you're done with life and you're ready for, here I am, God. Let's call this a day. And I'm not yet ready
Mm,
for that. Absolutely.
thank Thank you so much for that. Time freedom is where it's at, not retiring. I think this conversation has been so, so good, and we'll need to have you again. If you've enjoyed the conversation, just put a thumbs up in the comment section. We are time bad, but I'm sure we'll have Nancy again here. So I'd like us to wrap up this conversation, and we'll keep the conversations going, because this is very powerful stuff that moms and just parents in general and people can use in their life. So as we wrap up, and I'll give you, Nancy, just one last moment to leave with our listeners. Abujani Masterclass. The 77th Masterclass is starting on 11th May. That is next Monday. So if you haven't yet signed up, some of the things Nancy was talking about, you can learn more about that in that personal finance and investing masterclass. So from 11th May to the 29th of May, it will be happening from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. So please go to the Abujani X page and sign up for that masterclass so that you can learn more. It's all about wealth creation. We don't want to be rich. We want to be wealthy. We want to live generational wealth. So, Nancy, final word as we close here. What is that one thing that you'd like to leave with moms as we go to Mother's Day on Sunday?
Okay. We love our children so much. If you truly love your children, please, those of us that have been saying, I am working for myself and my children can work for themselves, you're doing your children a significant disservice. And those of you who say that setting a foundation for our children is spoiling them, you've been lied to. My children, they went to school in Boston for their uni, and one of them high school in Connecticut. When they got there, we were struggling to pay that school fee. And it's bonus after bonus, putting every shilling. And then our daughter said, Mom, you're the only one and a few other people whose parents are working to pay their school fees. Most of the children here, the school fees is paid by family trusts. And therefore, the parents of my friends and classmates, they are working for their grandchildren, not for them. The house they live in, it is a family home could be someplace in New York. Very, 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 upmarket neighborhood. They did not buy it. It was bequeathed to them. They are working on building a base for their family. And children, there's a child who lost his father, a pilot, and he had to be called out of school to go and actually be involved in family trust conversations because of their sheer amount of wealth. These are children going to extremely good schools. And when you see them, so it is not true. Please don't be lied to. Don't be lied to. It is also not true that when you see, for instance, you're acquiring a lot of property and you're handing over to your children and you're spoiling them. It is not true as long as you've got values and you've helped them to grow. Anytime you do not help your children grow and help build a base for them, what you're saying is that they can start 1,000 miles behind and compete for a great quality of life with somebody who is 1,000 miles ahead of them. So the starting point will never be the same. Some of the reasons, quite frankly, I'm also a little bit comfortable. It was my beneficiary. And I'm truly grateful to my husband. I've said this so many times on many platforms, on my husband's parents. I have never stopped working hard. He's never stopped working hard. Their siblings have never stopped working hard. Never. It's about values. But then the quality of life is so much better. So I implore on you, when you invest in yourself and invest in your child, invest for them so that we can build generational wealth, so that we can build greater experiences, laugh more, have more moments we can sit down and laugh and not be stressed about, if I lose that job, my life is over. I don't have to start over again. If I lose that business, my life is over. So build wealth unapologetically for yourselves, your families, your children, and their children. And then teach them values to be able to protect that wealth and to grow it and make it clear that they are responsible for protecting, preserving, and growing the family wealth. Thank you, Claire. And happy Mother's Day. It's a delightful thing to be a mother. It is a privilege to be a mother. I am so happy to be a mother. Very, very happy. And looking forward to many more grandchildren. So please pray for me. I'm looking for grandchildren. And God bless you all. Happy Mother's Day 2026.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks so much, Nancy. Happy Mother's Day to you too. And what a powerful way to end that conversation. Let's not be afraid of leaving things for our children. Let's set them up, but just have the right values. Yeah. That's a powerful way to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing so richly and really making us as moms feel like, we can do this. It's very possible. If someone else has done it, so can we. So I would like to end it at this. In case you missed any part of the conversation, it will be available on the Abojani X page as well as the Telegram page. The link will be available. So watch it again, share it with your families, your friends, other moms, other parents, because they will be richly blessed by this. So thanks so much, Nancy, for your time. Thanks, Abojani, for putting this together. And until next time, we will see you. And please sign up for that 77th masterclass happening from 11th May. That's next Monday. See you. Have a good evening.